Huge game this weekend at White Hart Lane. Tottenham host Manchester City, who bounced back from a defeat to West Ham to destroy Sunderland during the week. They are 4-1 in the Carling Cup. How will Manchester City respond to Tottenham, who seem to be growing in form? You'll find out right here on Let's Talk Tactics. So Manchester City seemed to steady the ship against Sunderland in the Carling Cup. Capital One Cup, just corrected myself, but it's the same thing. Come on, they change names every week. But this is the lineup that I think they will go with in this game. However, I do think that if Vincent Kompany is declared fit, which I think he was, I think he'll replace Mangala. I think it's time to make this switch. Now, I understand Mangala and Kompany had a good start to the season, but I do fancy the partnership of Otamendi and Kompany over those two, because I think that Mangala, as pointed out against Juventus, sometimes gets caught. Lapses in concentration, drifting runners in behind, has to be more focused for that. Kolarov, Mangala, Otamendi, Sagna. As I said, I think Kolarov, Kompany, Otamendi and Sagna. Fernandinho and Toure seem to have a more structured partnership this season. Look kind of solid. Going to touch on what Tottenham can do to try and exploit this. Sterling, De Bruyne, Navas and Aguero. This front four is what I'm going to focus on. Devastating against Sunderland. Devastating when they're on form, because the reason why. Aguero, as we know, one of the best strikers in the world at pushing defenders into their own box. For being small, he can hold up the ball very well. Very low centre of gravity. What happened with Manchester City against Sunderland, which didn't happen against West Ham, was the interchange of movement. Interchanging the movement between these front three. What happened on numerous occasions, De Bruyne found himself looping in behind Raheem Sterling, and for defenders to try and track a oncoming De Bruyne at speed is petrifying enough. But then imagine Raheem Sterling cutting inside and giving him 4 or 5 yards of space. They did this so perfectly against Sunderland, and that's why De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling were on the score sheet. Sterling scoring 2. One of them was a little lucky, but still, nonetheless, what happened in those exact examples, yes, I know I said that, Aguero pinning into the back, 2 defenders were in this area, pinpointed, and then what happened, and I understand Sunderland played deep, as I talked about in my tactics video for Full-Time Devils, you can check that out. Sunderland do play deep, but there's no excuse for allowing someone like Sterling and De Bruyne the possession that they had in that space. But they did a good job of creating that space for each other, because what happened was Raheem Sterling was starting the wide areas. De Bruyne would cut in deep, get the ball in this area, and it's simple as a 1-2. Looping in behind, and what Aguero does, he takes the centre-backs away. So there's a massive gap in here, and De Bruyne or Raheem Sterling can take up this space and put the ball into the back of the net. 3 out of the 4 goals came from that area in the box, and that's where I think they will exploit this against Tottenham. Now, Tottenham are no Sunderland. Sunderland are at the bottom of the table for a reason. I don't think they're playing well at all at the moment. Tottenham, however, are growing in stature, but they still have 2 holding midfielders that they like to change in around. Now, Ellie plays in there, and I think he's a growing player. I think they're already touting him for England, as everyone loves to do, but this is going to be a test for him to try and see if he can mark the likes of De Bruyne with his movement in behind. But let's talk about Tottenham and how they will line up against this year's potential champions. Putting it out there already. We'll see. Let's talk about Tottenham. So this is a lineup in which Tottenham played in their last game in the Capital One Cup. Now, I think they'll stick with the similar formation, but there will be some changes in the team. Rose, Wimmer, Fazio and Trippier are at the back. I think Vertonghen will come back in there, of course, to play in the centre defence role. I think in the middle, they'll stick with Carroll and Dyer. Maybe Elliot will come back in, as I think he has been performing so well at this so far this season. Chadley, Eriksson and Townsend, I think, will stay the same, because those 3 have been interchanging sometimes, and Lamela has come into the game to play up the right and the right-hand side of midfield, where I think he would be better than Townsend in this example. And Harry Kane, of course, leading the line up top. Now, Tottenham are starting to grow, because I don't think they're relying on Harry Kane to provide that attacking threat. But as you've seen against Arsenal, they leave themselves susceptible to breaking balls at the edge of the box. And that's where I think that Carroll and Dyer have to understand. Like, Flamini had a field day. I mean, he was just, everything he touched turned to gold. But that's a defensive midfielder run, and no one's tracking him. Now, Dyer, I put in my team of the week a couple of weeks ago, but Dyer needs to understand that he doesn't nearly just need to focus on Kevin De Bruyne. Now, he has to rely on his defenders, but what's been happening for Manchester City recently is they've been forcing teams back into their own box like this. And then up steps Toure and Fernandinho. Now, Dyer needs to step to one of these 2 and make sure to track their running behind, because Toure, as we've seen so prominently throughout his career, sometimes tracks the ball into the box and then will ping shots from the edge of the area. Now, if Flamini's got that space to pull the ball down and smack a volley like that, what's Yaya Toure going to do? Now, Dyer is going to have a hard job in understanding this, because he will be attracted to go and mark Kevin De Bruyne. As we said, De Bruyne will move into these areas and try and drag those holding midfielders apart. As soon as you separate yourself like this is where problems come in these gaps. They have to stay compact. They have to understand that this might need to be a job of someone like Lamela or Townsend, who's coming back to kind of double up and prevent that overlap and run into the fullback area and control the middle of the park. If they can confine this space and make it a little clustered, they'll force Manchester City to move back the way. They'll force them to try and start the possession or the attack in their own box. Now, Man City can do this, but doing that is what West Ham did. They suffocated Manchester City in some examples, and that's what has to be done in order to make sure that you don't concede, and then from there you can push forward. Now, in an attacking sense, we're going to have a new partnership probably. We're going to have Otamendi and company, or if they play Mangala and company, that's still a partnership that leaves gaping holes. And not as much so this season, but they are still there as West Ham exploited. Harry Kane needs to continue to do what he does best. And that is when Harry Kane was in his prime, he'd make these runs in behind last season, cut onto his right foot. Now, I think he needs to split the defenders. He needs to focus his runs directly at splitting in between the centre-backs, try and stretch them to create this gap. And one moment I remember, I talked about it in my full-time Devils Tactics as well, I'm kind of linking these guys all in, is when they played Mason, one of the best moves I've seen Tottenham do this year was nice football, starting from the defensive midfield areas, knocking the ball in and out, and then Mason made this run into the gap. Now, I think that either of their holding midfielders can do this, and it's tricky. As I just mentioned there, Fernandinho and Yaya Toure, I think they did it against West Ham, got tested. I don't think that they've been tested as much with the late runs into the box, which they struggled with last season. They would often dive in and be caught trying to pick up the guy who plays in the hole, the attacking midfielder. And I told in my previous clip Manchester United to do this against Sunderland. Tottenham should do it against City. Push one of those guys forward. If it is going to be someone like Mason, who I don't think's fit at the moment, if it's going to be one of those attacking sensed holding midfielders who can support the attack, have them drifting behind, have them split Fernandinho and Yaya Toure, have them upset that partnership, and you might find some luck in there. But per usual, I'm going to give my prediction in this game. So I still think that Manchester City are going to be too strong. I think they will concede. I think that it will be 2-1 to Man City. I think that Kevin De Bruyne will get on the score sheet again, as he's been picking up the goals now and there. But I think that Man City will just be too strong for Spurs in this game at White Hart Lane. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, subscribe to TYT Sports. Follow me on Twitter @Francis_Maxwell.